Are new mountain bikes better? Let's find out. These days, mountain bike marketing moves fast. A degree slacker here, frame storage there, and suddenly last year's bike feels outdated. But are new bikes really better, or is that just marketing talking and you can grab an older bike and just send it? To find out, I got my hands on this, a borrowed 2012 Santa Cruz V10 Gen 4. In bike years, that's basically vintage. And with a bike that's old, questions come up like, is the geometry whack and outdated? Is the frame structurally sound and correct? And are the parts reliable or ticking time bombs? So the plan today is to clean this bike, get it all tuned up, and restore it back to its former glory. And then we can test this bike to see if this old one can hang with the new one. And while I do, I want to give you a quick history of the Santa Cruz V10. Santa Cruz Bicycles released the V10 in 2002 as a downhill race bike. V10 means version 10, the 10th prototype before production. It was the first Santa Cruz to use VPP suspension, and it came with a whopping 255 millimeters of rear travel. Back then, it rolled on 26-inch wheels, had a 67-degree head tube, and even a floating brake arm. It was a hit, but it was heavy and stiff. In 2011, the one we have here, the Generation 4 went carbon in the front triangle. This was one of the first reliable carbon DH bikes and saved a ton of weight. The geometry was way ahead of its time too, with a 64-degree head tube angle and adjustable travel from 254 millimeters to 216 with a flip chip in the rear. Wow, this bike cleaned up nicely. So I've done a few old bike videos now, and it's super interesting because mountain bikes in the 2010s changed rapidly and standards changed nonstop. So if you buy an older bike today, you have to check the standards very carefully. So let's see what this Gen 4 is working with. Okay, there's some good news and some bad. Even with the 13-year-old bike, it has some standards that we use today. There's a 83 millimeter ISO bottom bracket, no front derailleur, and a 55 millimeter chain line. And it has downhill standards like a straight steer tube and a 20x110 boost through axle. That's really important because if you break something, you can replace it with new 2025 stuff, but if the frame goes, you're out of luck because there was no lifetime warranty offered back in 2012. But I found some outdated standards. The shock is not metric, it's a 9.5 by 3 inch. Although some brands like Fox and DVO still make that size, but the biggest surprise is the rear hub spacing. It's 12 by 150, so 2 millimeters wider than the boost through axles we use today, and most modern downhill bikes use Super Boost. I've never even heard of 12 by 150 before. And of course, the wheels are 26 inches, and that poses a lot of problems. Getting 26-inch rims, tires, even forks are going to be a challenge, but it's not yet impossible. And let's say I took this to Trestle and broke something, the odds that the Village Bike Shop would have a replacement part are very slim, and that's the real challenge of riding older mountain bikes. My biggest worry here, the tires. These are Maxxis EXO casing, which today is a light trail casing. They do feel a bit thicker than the current EXO, so maybe Maxxis changed up the nomenclature, 13 years ago, but that still worries me for when I ride this later in the video. Oh, and there's tubes front and rear. Before we get into geometry and other parts, I'm gonna tune this bike up the best that I can, hopefully without snapping any 13-year-old bolts. I started by dialing in the shifting, not a big deal on a downhill bike, but I had another reason. So I found this V10 on Pink Bike listed for $1,600 by a guy in Ohio. I told him I wanted to compare the new V10 against this one, but I didn't mention YouTube. So instead of selling it, he offered to let me borrow it as a favor. I just had to cover shipping both ways. And I'm super thankful he did that. So the least I could do was dial it in and give it a proper refresh. Some parts on this bike look new, like this XTR derailleur, but I checked, it came out in 2011. It even has a clutch switch that's still super stiff. The Shimano Saints are a whole different story though. When I saw the listing, it said Saints, and I got hyped, but I didn't know that these were the older generation and these are relics. They have some funky quirks too. First, there's no bleed port on the lever. Instead, you open up this little plastic window to a diaphragm and a puddle of fluid. Totally different from what we got today. Still, I'll give them a full bleed just to be safe. And I gotta say, I like the chunky lever blade. It feels tougher than the new ones. But, you know, brakes aren't all about how they look or how they feel in the garage on the stand. Out on the trail, you find out real quick if they're solid or a disaster waiting to happen. So the last thing to do before testing both bikes is I gotta fix the rear end. I sat on the bike and the rear shock is so soft, like comically bouncy. I ran it through a spring calculator and even Santa Cruz's website recommends the 450, but I don't know, that's too soft for me, but hey, maybe this spring is worn out. Is that a thing? Going one step up in spring rate should give the bike more balance, and I would have liked to service the fork, but I'm not trying to take apart this bike too much. Sometimes if something works, it's best to leave it alone. I always say you don't ask the question you don't want the answer to. Plus, I have a timeline with this bike. I have to ship it back by next week so the owner and his buddy can go ride a bike park. He did say that the suspension was serviced and the linkage bearings changed in 2022. Oh man, I guess that's 3 years ago at this point. Where does time go? Come on, don't strip. Oh yeah. The final thing I want to do is remove this old adhesive. This really makes the bike look worn and dated. And I've done this before on video and I asked what's the best way to get this off, and I got a bunch of comments to use either WD-40 or gasoline to remove this, so let's give it a try. No luck on the WD-40, so let's switch to gasoline. I'm definitely cracking open the garage door for this one for some ventilation. At first, the gas seemed like it wasn't working, but all of a sudden after like 30 seconds, the adhesive was softened and came right off. Man, I love getting good recommendations in the comments. This bike looks good as new. In the last old versus new video, I changed out a few parts to modernize it a little, and I still get comments to this day saying that test was nullified because I installed some wider bars. This Gen 4 has some pretty narrow 750mm bars. I'd love to replace them, but I'm just gonna run it as is for that authentic 2012 experience. All right, let's go hit the trail. Man, I am excited to compare these two. And I'm sure the Gen 4 V10 can do all these trails here in Lake Leatherwood, but I don't know if it can do them as well as the Gen 8, but let's talk geometry. This is a mullet, 29 in the front, 27.5 in the rear, with a 62.9 degree head tube angle, a 474 reach, and a 77 degree seat tube angle. The bottom bracket is 353 tall, chainstay is 456, and a 1300mm wheelbase. The Gen 4 V10 is a full 26er with a 64 degree head tube angle, a tiny reach of 440, and a slacked out 71 degree seat tube angle. The bottom bracket is higher, 370mm, chainstay is shorter, 439, and a shorter wheelbase. So just to recap, the Gen 8 is only 1 degree slacker, but has a 30mm longer reach and a 90mm longer wheelbase. But the Gen 4 does have a shorter rear end, and maybe this bike will be more playful because this thing feels like a race bike. And with this having a 447 reach, that's like a smaller medium in today's number, and I can feel it sitting on this bike. It feels pretty small, and I don't think this bike has any chance of keeping up with the Gen 8 times, but hey, we'll find out. But what I'm gonna do first is take out this beast right here, the Gen 8, get warmed up, get some times, and then I can take out the old one. All right, let's start off the run. DH2, and then I'll go to DH5. Let's get it. Ooh, a little loose today. For those that don't know, this video is part of my Countdown to Colorado series. I've got just 2 weeks before heading out to ride one of the gnarliest bike parks in Colorado, maybe the USA. Every episode I've been pushing myself, testing gear, and building up for the trip. I want to make the most out of my 2 days there, conquer as many trails as possible, and come home in one piece. Hopefully all this preparation will pay off. Dude, I finally got this bike feeling good, and I was looking at my form yet again and comparing it to the downhill guys. Now, I'm trying to stay neutral, I'm trying to drop my heels, but one thing I noticed, I was lifting my front foot up a lot, and I don't think the downhill guys do that. I'm trying to prevent that today, and the first 2 runs have gone so good. Now I'm just plowing through everything, and that's what I've been chasing on this downhill bike. But hey, maybe I'll learn something on bike feel with that Gen 4, so let's go see how it goes. All right, now it's getting real. It's time to ride the old bike. And I gotta say, I'm a little bit nervous now. The nerves are creeping in because now I start having doubts like, why am I doing this? Is an older bike reliable? And then just standing on this thing, man, just feels so small, you know? So I did this to myself though. I gotta test if an old bike is worth it in 2025. Let's hit it. All right, gonna take it pretty easy on the first one. Still gonna hit this jump though. Whoa. Uh-oh. The rear brake is like not pumping up. This is sketchy. Pump the rear. There it goes. Okay. So far, so good. I can definitely feel that the bottom bracket is way higher, but I have good grip so far, and I'm really not feeling the 26-inch wheels at all. I don't even notice I'm riding a 26er right now. Nice. These rear brakes are scary. Oh, damn it. Oh, that was the most embarrassing fall. Just went over the corner. Oh, my hand. Oh, my palm hurts. How stupid, man. What am I doing here? And that's only because the rear brake was not really working. I was trying to get the front to carry the load while I was pumping up the rear. And this corner is pretty tricky anyway, but stupid. Got a little bit of swelling and bruising right there. It actually looks worse on camera. Dang. Hopefully there's nothing wrong there. But I'm gonna do another lap and kind of feel it out on this bike. I can't give up after just one run. All right, back up to DH2. Gonna give this a go. I got the brake adjusted as like 2 different settings here. So the bite point, the initial bite point is where I want it to be. Hopefully this goes well. And really, that's just a lesson learned. With an older bike, you really got to go over it and make sure everything's safe, because things don't last and things wear out over time, and you got to check to make sure you're safe to ride it. And no one's forcing me to do this. No one's forcing me to do this next run, but I owe it to myself. I gotta feel out my hand because it does not feel good right now. I think I landed on like a rock or something. I hope it's not a freaking ligament problem like I had last year though. That would just be terrible, man. Because I got the trestle, I'm actually flying there, so I got everything booked up, so it's like, something's wrong. I just wasted a bunch of money. Well, let's see how this DH2 run goes.
All right, here we go. I think the rear tube is losing air, so, oh man. Old bike problems right there. The bike rides well, I will say that. I don't know if I want to do the drop right here. No, I can get it. Pretty small drop. Depends on who you talk to. Yeah, the brake just kind of fades away. I gotta take the chicken line here, man. The brakes are not working like they should be. What is this noise now? Oh, that's not good. The caliper bolt just completely fell out. What the hell? This is crazy, man. All right, I'm done riding this thing. So are old mountain bikes worth it in 2025? The answer to that is it depends. I think it's unrealistic to think that all mountain bikes are the same, that you can just buy an old bike like this and it's gonna be reliable, you can just ride it forever. I look at a bike as a consumable tool. Things get worn out, you throw it away and you put new parts on. And with a bike like this, yeah, $1,600 is what the guy wanted for it, but I would consider it like a project car. You know, project cars are something you have to be passionate about. Maybe you liked this bike back in 2012, you've always wanted one, and now you have a chance to get one for cheap. And there's older bikes out there that I would say were way ahead of their time, and this bike would be one of them. Pretty slack front end, pretty modern geometry, and I really thought the frame and the suspension worked really well. And I just thought that was crazy how I couldn't even tell it was a 26er. So I think a bike like this would be a pretty fun project bike, but it's gonna cost you a lot of money in the long run. And you know, I probably should put different brakes on this thing and send it back to him, because I don't think these are safe. It's just gone. The brakes are so gone. It's like, I don't even know what's happening with it. And also the rear tube has a leak at the valve now, so I got to fix that. But if you're looking just for a reliable mountain bike, look for something newer. Maybe you can get something that's like 2016 that's not used as much, but I would stay away from a well-used 15-year-old bike.